Order. Welcome to meeting number 34 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Health. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format pursuant to standing orders. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, please click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. At the bottom of your screen, you can select the appropriate channel for interpretation, either floor, English, or French. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can, and we appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. Beside the regular members on this committee, on behalf of the committee members, I would love to welcome Christina Tasser-Dirksen to the committee. No, that's the temporary one. Oh, they're permanent members. Aslam is permanent. She's the only temporary. Okay, we can welcome Aslam Rana as well, and love to welcome. And I forgot Jake earlier when he joined. Jake. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, September the 23rd, 2025, the committee shall resume its study of Canada's pharmaceutical sovereignty. On behalf of the committee members, I would like to welcome our witnesses. From Best Medicines Coalition, we have Kim Steele, who has joined us by video conference. Welcome, Ms. Steele. From Canadian Health Food Agency, Vice President, Government Relations and Regulatory Affairs, Ms. Sonia Parmar. Ms. Parmar, welcome. And from GPIM, we have General Manager Stefan Lebec. Mr. Lebec, welcome to the committee. So now I'm going to give this floor to the witnesses, and I will go in the sequence that I introduced, if that's okay. So we will give Ms. Steele 5 minutes, if you're ready, Ms. Steele.
Yes, thank you. Members of the committee, thank you. I'm here as chair of the Best Medicines Coalition, a national alliance of over 30 organizations that gives voice to the interests of millions of Canadian patients. I'm also with Cystic Fibrosis Canada, a member of Best Medicines. When we talk about pharmaceutical sovereignty, we often focus on manufacturing, supply chain, strategic interdependence, tariff exceptions, all important. But sovereignty must also address something much closer to our everyday lives, how we get the medicines we need as Canadians to survive and thrive. Every Canadian needs some form of pharmaceutical coverage, but Canada's complex, fragmented mix of public and private drug plans undermines sovereignty. We have 14 sovereign public drug plans and over 100,000 sovereign private drug plans. All operate with different rules, formularies, timelines, making it impossible for Canada to act as a coherent nation, weakening our ability to ensure predictable access to medicines. If we are to move forward with sovereignty, extending similar drug access to rights to our own citizens would be a good start. Much of the current discussion on pharmaceutical sovereignty has focused on essential medicines and generics. While critically important, this focus is incomplete. Innovative medicines, including biologics, oncology therapies, cell and gene therapies, and drugs for rare diseases are equally essential and must be explicitly included in Canada's sovereignty strategy. Innovative therapies are often the only options for people with rare diseases, as well as clinical trials, including rare cancers. Delays at any stage, regulatory review, clinical trial startup, health technology assessment, or reimbursement can mean missed treatment windows, irreversible disease progression, and premature death. Cystic fibrosis provides a stark example. Trikafta is a life-changing therapy that benefits more than 95% of the Canadian cystic fibrosis population. Within 2 years of access in Canada, days in hospital were reduced by nearly 40%. Home IV days were using antibiotics was reduced by 60%, and lung transplants were reduced by almost 70%. And yet this transformational therapy came to Canada 2 years after people in other countries got it. Why? Because prolonged uncertainty around proposed pricing reforms delayed the manufacturer's decision to launch in Canada. So, while patients elsewhere got better, Canadian patients with cystic fibrosis waited, and they watched, and they grew sicker, and we lost some who were waiting for this medicine to come. These experiences are not unique to cystic fibrosis. When it comes to access to medicines in Canada, uncertainty is everywhere. Pharmaceutical sovereignty is not achieved through good intentions. Countries that take sovereignty seriously rely on clear laws, regulations, and incentives to ensure medicines are developed, launched, studied, and supplied in their countries. That predictability enables patient access and signals to innovators that a country, and most importantly, its people, are worth investing in. The U.S. Orphan Drug Act is a powerful example. Implemented in 1983, it established market exclusivity, tax credits, grants, priority review, and the elimination of FDA application user fees for orphan drugs. Another U.S. initiative is the Transferable Priority Review Voucher, which accelerates access to future therapies. If used in Canada, these vouchers may have helped close the access gap to Trikafta and many other innovative therapies. These incentives were written into law, and they have transformed rare disease drug development throughout the globe. Ironically, some of the therapies developed under that framework are the same ones that Canadians can't access right now because we've not implemented similar initiatives. If Canada wants innovative medicines to be developed, studied, and accessed here, we need laws and policies that actively support patient access. At minimum, pharmaceutical sovereignty must deliver 4 things. 1, a reliable and continuous supply of medicines across all therapeutic areas. 2, timely access to innovation, including faster regulatory approval and market access. 3, equitable access across jurisdictions and payer types. And 4, system resilience so Canada remains an attractive environment for research, clinical trials, and life sciences investment. Pharmaceutical sovereignty is not an abstract economic concept. It's about whether Canadians can stay healthy, participate fully in society, and trust that the medicines we need will be there when we need them. On behalf of millions of patients across Canada, thank you. We encourage you to keep patient access, equity, and lived experience at the center of this study.
Thank you, Ms. Steele. 4 minutes, 50 seconds. Perfect timing. Now we will go to Ms. Parmar for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Bonjour et merci beaucoup.
Hello, and thank you very much.
The association represents over 1,000 companies, including members across the entire natural health product supply chain in Canada. This study is about pharmaceutical sovereignty, and at its core, it's about control. Control over what is produced in Canada, what is regulated in Canada, and what products Canadians actually use. Natural health products are not a niche category. Over 80% of Canadians use them. Vitamins, minerals, probiotics, and herbal products are part of how Canadians manage their health every day. They are not only widely used by Canadians, but they're also integrated into the healthcare system. They're often used in hospitals and long-term care. For example, vitamin D and calcium are used in institutional and high-risk populations to reduce fracture risk, and probiotics are used in some settings to help prevent hospital-acquired infections. Natural health products are complementary tools to pharmaceuticals that play an important role in preventative medicine, improving outcomes, and reducing pressure on the healthcare system. To illustrate the impact, we commissioned a cost-benefit analysis grounded in established frameworks. Approximately $2.3 billion in avoided costs over 25 years could be saved, rising to $3.9 billion when similar interventions across the healthcare system are included. These figures, while reflective of standard health economic modeling, are conservative, capturing only selected interventions and defined cost components. From a pharmaceutical sovereignty perspective, this directly affects system resilience and reliance on supply chains. A system that can prevent demand is more sustainable and less dependent on constrained pharmaceutical supply chains. Natural health products also represent a critical component of Canada's domestic manufacturing base. We have an established sector that formulates, manufactures, tests, and distributes natural health products domestically. These are Canadian facilities, Canadian jobs, and Canadian quality. So sovereignty is not just about access. It's about control over production and standards within your own borders. Canada has already made a deliberate policy choice in how it regulates this space. For over 20 years, natural health products have been governed under a dedicated regulatory framework that reflects their lower risk and their role in prevention. The current framework was designed to right-size regulation while maintaining oversight. But there is a growing risk to that system, and it goes directly against sovereignty. Under the Food and Drugs Act, Canadians can import a personal supply of health products, commonly understood as up to 90 days. In practice, it's being leveraged at a commercial scale by foreign companies to access the Canadian market without meeting Canadian regulatory requirements. Let me put this another way. This is not always being used for personal use. This is a direct commercial pathway into Canada that bypasses Canadian regulatory oversight, creating risks for safety, fairness, and system control. Our analysis estimates that this represents approximately $450 million per year, a substantial portion of the natural health product market operating outside Canadian regulatory oversight. That's nearly 10% of the Canadian market, which continues to grow. This activity may also be associated with an estimated $51 million annually lost in tax revenues that would otherwise support the Canadian economy and public services. Yet, at home, the rules keep tightening, even as red tape reduction is promised, leaving Canadian businesses to compete against a channel that operates outside our rules. It's like asking one team to play by the rule book while the other team gets to decide its own rules. If requirements continue to tighten without closing that gap, consumption won't go down. It will keep moving outside the Canadian system. Less production, less control, less sovereignty. So the question before this committee is not whether natural health products should be regulated. They already are. The question is whether Canada keeps control of this part of the market or lets it move beyond our oversight. Because if we lose control of the lowest risk, most widely used products in our system, we're not strengthening pharmaceutical sovereignty, we are surrendering it. Merci, et j'ai hâte de répondre à vos questions.
Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Ms. Parmar, well done. And now we will go to Mr. Lebec. Mr. Lebec, you have 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to contribute to this important study on Canada's pharmaceutical sovereignty. My name is Stéphane Levesque, and I'm the General Manager of GPIM, an association that has been active for more than 40 years and which represents SMEs and emerging pharmaceutical companies, primarily in the generic drug sector. At the outset, we must recognize a fundamental reality. Pharmaceutical sovereignty is a complex and difficult objective to achieve. We have to be realistic, and Canadian pharmaceutical sovereignty will never be absolute. We must also recognize that it depends as much on provincial governments as on the federal government. Better collaboration among all levels of government will be essential if we truly want to make progress. That said, we can certainly do better. First, Canadian ownership versus simply being established in Canada. It is essential to distinguish between a pharmaceutical company merely operating in Canada and one that is Canadian-owned. Foreign companies established here play an important role, but Canadian-owned companies should occupy a more strategic place in our pharmaceutical autonomy. The pandemic demonstrated the limits of excessive dependence on foreign interests. Some countries prioritize their own populations by redirecting medicines, vaccines, and medical equipment. Canada must therefore implement targeted financial, regulatory, and commercial measures to better support Canadian-owned pharmaceutical companies. Second, Health Canada delays. In 2018, the modernization of regulatory fees was intended to improve regulatory performance. Today, however, we are witnessing the opposite. Review timelines for drug submissions continue to grow longer. Delays are now measured in months and sometimes years, even though the established target for a generic drug review is 180 days. Meanwhile, other jurisdictions, particularly the United States, are improving their efficiency. Without regulatory predictability, investments become significantly riskier. Recently, to improve performance, Health Canada proposed an order allowing reliance on decisions or documents from foreign regulatory authorities for certain drugs. GPIM was the first organization to raise concerns. GPIM was the first organization to raise concerns that this measure could produce the opposite effect of what is intended. It could further overwhelm Health Canada's already limited internal resources due to an increasing number of submissions from foreign companies and could even lead to a form of regulatory dumping to the detriment of Canadian-owned businesses. This is not encouraging for Canadian pharmaceutical sovereignty. Third, the lowest price policy for generic drugs. Provincial reimbursement policies based almost exclusively on the lowest price represent a major obstacle to pharmaceutical sovereignty. 20 or 30 years ago, a much larger share of medicines was manufactured in Canada. However, the combination of lowest price policies and the absence of annual indexation pushes manufacturers toward lower-cost countries such as India and China. Without policy changes, this offshoring trend will continue. Fourth, Buy Canadian. GPIM supports a Buy Canadian policy that includes pharmaceuticals. A portion of hospital procurement contracts and strategic stockpiles of essential medicines should be reserved for Canadian-owned companies. Fifth, active pharmaceutical ingredient manufacturing. We may have all the manufacturing capacity in the world in Canada, but without access to active molecules, we are heading in the wrong direction. We must support innovative and less polluting API manufacturing. Professor André Charrette's continuous flow manufacturing project at the University of Montreal, which is supported by Médicaments Québec, is an excellent example that has been slow to materialize due to insufficient government support. Sixth, strategic alliances. We must develop agreements with reliable and trusted countries in order to share certain production capacities. A chosen and strategic interdependence is preferable to a dependence that is imposed upon us. In conclusion, pharmaceutical sovereignty will require coherent political choices, targeted investments, and better coordination among governments. Above all, it will require a long-term vision aimed at protecting the health and economic security of Canadians. Thank you.
Perfect timing. And now we will go to the honourable members. We will start with Madam Konaz for 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My questions are for Ms. Palmer. Canada created a distinct regulatory framework for natural health products more than 20 years ago. Why was a separate framework necessary, and does it still serve an important purpose today?
Thank you for your question. It is absolutely necessary for natural health products to be a distinct category. Previously, they were regulated as both foods and drugs, and this was not considered appropriate. This is a world-renowned regulatory framework that was put together. And so for many reasons, natural health products need to be right size, right fit regulated. So reasons, for example, that they are not patent protected. They are often combined with many ingredients. They don't, act the same way that pharmaceuticals do or necessarily as foods. They are closer to foods. And so you will see that the whole framework itself needs to be regulated as distinct, and we have seen over time that this has been lost more and more with the legislative and regulatory framework proposals that have Health Canada have put forward, which is why we have been fighting that natural health products are not drugs and do need to be regulated appropriately according to their risk level.
Thank you for that answer. Are there other countries that we mirror ourselves after, or that would be good to follow that are doing this successfully?
So Canada has actually been the international standard for about 20 years. It wasn't until the legislative and regulatory proposals were put forward that IADSA, they're the International, essentially Dietary Supplement Association, so NHP, Association of Associations globally. They have actually been the ones to come out and say that this is, like all of the regulatory and legislative proposals that have been put forward have weakened our system in such that if you go too far or you regulate something too much, it no longer fits its purpose. And therefore, Canadians can lose access. Over-regulation is something that is very serious for our industry, and it is something that needs to be taken seriously because, as I mentioned, we are in direct competition with other countries like the States that have a much easier pathway to market. Canada is the only country that has a rigid pre-market approval system. And so when you're in direct competition with countries like that, it makes it very difficult for Canadian companies to compete. So we would like to remain number one in the world, in which case we really need to make sure that our regulations are fit for purpose.
I believe in your opening statement, you referenced in your opening statement a growing amount of market activity occurring outside Canadian regulatory oversight. In your view, what needs to happen to close that gap while ensuring Canadian businesses can remain competitive?
I think a couple of things need to happen. I do think that Health Canada does have to help close the gap. So in other words, Canada needs to do a better job of making sure that our borders are secure when things are coming in. So Canadian Border Services Agency, Health Canada, the RCMP, these groups need to work together to ensure that Canadians aren't necessarily exposed to the amount of illegal product or product outside of the Canadian regulatory framework. But Health Canada also needs to recognize that these businesses need to be able to compete. And therefore, the regulatory system itself needs to be appropriate and right fit for the risk-based profile that these products present.
So $450 million in market activity occurs outside the Canadian regulatory oversight. So what impact does that have on Canadian manufacturers, retailers, investment in domestic production?
This has great impacts. You'll see that often retailers will tell you experiences of Canadians coming in on their mobile phones with products that they can access quite easily from the States or other countries, namely the States, and that they can't necessarily find in Canada. It greatly diminishes sales at the retail level. So it has a much bigger picture and impact when you look at, manufacturing. It goes all throughout the ecosystem. It greatly diminishes access. Like I said earlier, Canadians aren't necessarily going to stop consuming. They will find other ways, and in many cases, less expensive ways to buy products. And so it shuts down all the way from manufacturing all through the supply chain and impacts at the retail level. And it also has an impact on Canadians when they're potentially reaching out for riskier products or products that are not within the Canadian regulated system.
Is Health Canada aware of the growing amount of market activity occurring outside the Canadian regulatory system, and what is being done about it? And we don't have a lot of time, but I imagine that's a loaded question.
30 seconds.
We've made Health Canada aware. They are working with us to some degree, but more can definitely be done. They have just this morning put out a public advisory to notify Canadians of the work that they've done with Operation Pangea. But I would say that they're also, they've in the past also told us that Canadians need to have access in the ways that they choose, which is why we have said that that includes from our domestic Canadian supply chain. So many unintended consequences can happen when we don't close that gap. And so Health Canada is aware. We have made formal complaints about this. And so we are hoping that they step up to the plate and really close down some of these channels, especially some of the larger players that we have made them aware of.
Thank you. 6 minutes, 24 seconds. We will go to Mr. Rana for 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all the witnesses for your valuable time spending with us this afternoon. Ms. Kim Steele, back in March 2026, this committee heard from various experts that Canadian pharmaceutical sovereignty does not mean making everything in Canada. Instead, it implies a precision-based national strategy that reduces over-reliance on global sources. Could you please tell this committee if there are any over-dependencies on internationally supplied pharmaceuticals in Canada?
I would say that what we see is supply that we need, and we don't often get supply that we do need. So I can't say that we're overrepresented, but I can say that there's still people who can't get the medicines that they need. I think at the end of the day, our role as a country is to ensure that our people can get medicines, and if we can't get them into Canada and we can't produce them in Canada, we have to figure out ways to do that.
Diversify their pharmaceutical supply chain to avoid over dependencies and ensure Canadians get the help they needed.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the lead of your question.
How can Canada diversify their pharmaceutical supply chain to avoid over dependencies and ensure Canadians get the help they need?
Again, I mean, our brief is really largely on patient access. I am not a supply chain expert. However, I think we have lots of people who've testified before this committee that have had some very good ideas in that area. At the end of the day, there are medicines that we can make in Canada, but there may be medicines that we can't. And to get a supply chain in order that makes sure that the medicines that come through to Canada are coming through on time, they are not in shortage, there are no delays, and that they continue to come to Canada, that companies don't decide to not bring them to Canada. Those are all significant issues. The supply chain is just one part of that overall access issue.
And this committee has heard that there are issues with monitoring the drugs available in the country at given times. There are also calls for data sharing across the country on the medication availability and stockpiles. Should the federal government require faster real-time reporting on inventory levels, shortages, and supply chain risks?
Absolutely. I mean, we as Best Medicines Coalition, we're fortunate and to sit on the drug shortages committee that Health Canada has, as well as the multi-sector stakeholder table, and we talk about those things there. We really need to be able to monitor in real time, especially with some of the challenges we're seeing coming out of U.S. drug policy. I will say this: of the 17 companies that signed on to the invitation to bring their supplies to the U.S. and do some manufacturing, some of those many of them, all of them, are making medicines that we need here in Canada. So we have to watch. I think one of our challenges as a country is ensuring that we're looking at what's coming into Canada, but that we're also sharing data on what we have and what we don't have at local pharmacies, communities, hospitals. I know in the rare disease space with cystic fibrosis, often our pharmacists are having to mix medicines and compound things because they can't get the medicines they need for their patients.
And who is the best suited to take charge of gathering and managing that information?
Ooh, that's a big question. I think there are many sources of information. Canada's Drug Agency recently did some work through the National Strategy for Drugs Rare Disease on patient registries. There's a lot of rich registry data that's available on patient outcomes, and we can see where drugs have been in shortage, where they might affect patient outcomes in some aspects. So, I think it's a collaboration. I think there's a leadership role here by the federal government. I think our provinces and territories, they all have their own systems. I think through the healthcare agreements that we have in place in terms of some of the bilateral agreements. There's a lot of good stuff going on, but we have to continue to work collaboratively and all shine and do the work that we're meant to do. And I think one of the big challenges that we face is there's just not always great integration between our systems, and that these databases, these registries, that some of them, like ours, are 50 years old, they're not tapped into. There's a lot of data that we just aren't leveraging in this country.
And in your submission to the committee, you mentioned that BMC has called for proactive federal monitoring of drug supply risks.
That's
So
right.
what would this look like in practice?
Yeah, I mean, we already do some of that monitoring. What we need to do again is it's these collaborative efforts. I think Health Canada does a great job of monitoring some of the drugs that are getting caught up at the border, if you will, that not getting into the country, of monitoring delays. However, we still need to have that domestic capacity to monitor from the inside and to be able to report up and report down.
Thank you very much. 6 minutes, 5 seconds. Before I go to the next speaker, I would like to welcome Madam Jeanette Lavac to the committee, but unfortunately, I would not be able to give you the speaking time. Only way you will be able to vote if your camera is on by thumbs up or thumbs down. That's it. Thank you, Madam Lavac. I hope you got what I meant. So now we'll go to Mr. Yeah, that's right. And Madam Lavac, you got to open your camera to be as part of the committee. Okay, that's up to the whip's office now to deal with it. Mr. Blanchett Jonka, please go ahead for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to welcome the witnesses who are with us. My first question to Mr. Levesque. Are you aware of the workforce to improve Canada's competitiveness? And so the task force on the pharmaceutical and life sciences sector that the government created in March 2026, you're not aware? Okay. Well, I would be delighted to join. Well, the government put this online, but they don't have a list of who the members are. So as a parliamentarian, I had to ask the question to the government because I find it very important to know who the members of this committee are. So we got the list of the members: Pfizer Canada, AbbVie, Roche Canada, Merck, Novartis, Ramis Biotechnology, AstraZeneca, CSL, Bristol Myers Squibb, Novo Nordisk, Sanofi, Johnson & Johnson, Eli Lilly, Moderna, Dilib, GSK Canada, Canada Medicines Agency, Aspect Biosystems, MGM, Biotech Canada, Takeda, and Boehringer. So it is very concentrated on the big pharmaceutical companies, multinational companies. So Quebec and Canadian fabric producers, manufacturers, are they sufficiently represented here to achieve the objectives that the government wishes to improve access to medication, reduce cost, and the other objectives? Well, these are all very good companies. I'm not against them. But of course, this leads us to ask certain questions. What are the place of the real Canadian pharmaceutical companies? Where are they in all this? So in all the companies that you just listed, none of them are 100% Canadian owned. None of them. Would like to give you a bit of background, put things into perspective. During the pandemic, we were 2 weeks away from running out of Rocuarium, which is a medicine to put people to sleep during surgeries and operations. And a call was sent out to all pharmaceutical companies, and all these great pharmaceutical companies told us, well, our reserves are dedicated to places other than Canada. So that was the answer we got. There was one Quebec company who put up their hand to say, this makes no sense, we will find you some. And this Canadian Quebec company was the one that found this product in the US to procure us some under emergency circumstances. Without this Canadian company, we would have been in a very tough situation. Well, thank you for sharing this information. I think it's very important for committee members and the public at large to know about this. So a reliable access to medicines. And this group I just listed to you, the government set up this group to find solutions. Can you really find solutions when you have such an underrepresentation of local manufacturers and generic manufacturers who aren't even on this task force? And I just gave you the number of the names of manufacturers, not patient groups or physicians. Well, it's not that we're underrepresented, we're simply not represented. So I don't have anything else to add to that. Now, a group that is dominated by multinational companies, is there a risk for this group to restrict innovation and product availability? Well, this kind of a composition wouldn't really do a good job of answering Canadians' needs when we have a pandemic or something else of that scale. Well, this is part of the global picture, as I was saying. We need to be mindful of these big innovators, but also Canadian-owned companies. Mr. Levesque, you actually answered my next question. Now, if you put this in the larger context, can we really talk about pharmaceutical sovereignty when you're not leaving any space for local manufacturers? Well, the answer is no. Well, if you just want to confirm so that you're on record as answering the question. You also talk about the drug submission timelines and delays at Health Canada, which is undermining competitiveness on the part of Canadian companies vis-a-vis the U.S. and others. Well, I'm the general manager of our organization, and I'm not saying there hasn't been any improvement, but quite the opposite. Actually, the delays are getting longer year on year, despite the reimbursement scheme that was introduced, that was allegedly introduced to make it so that there will be more people to review the files that were being submitted. But unfortunately, that's not what we see. And now they're trying to take the next step by just approving or relying on the approvals of other countries and considering these medicines as being pre-approved when they're entering into Canada. So when you get approved elsewhere, you have a faster track to Canada compared to a Canadian-owned company who needs to have access to the Canadian market. So Canadian-owned companies are being penalized to the detriment of international, multinational companies. And this is, of course, a big dumping risk. Now, I appeared before the Committee on the Study for Biosimilars, and I warned everyone, saying that we're actually handing the keys to our home to the U.S. We accepted only one country in this product group, and it was the United States, and that's what we're stuck with.
And now, we'll move to the second round, and we will start with Mr. Bailey for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank all the witnesses today. Ms. Palmer, I want to thank you for all your work that you've done with the Canadian Health Food Association. Although I wasn't in Parliament as an MP while the campaign to save the supplements was ongoing, I've heard from colleagues, both MPs and staff, that it was one, if not the largest, letter campaign ever protest of the draconian Liberal legislation that directly targeted the natural health product industry in this country. How can the government claim to want to protect Canadian sovereignty, strengthen domestic supply chains, and lower our reliance on other markets when an industry like the natural health products have been undermined and attacked for so long by this Liberal government?
So I think that the government put through a lot of regulatory and legislative changes that propose that we look more like drugs. In your previous question, you asked us about, whether that was appropriate and whether we needed our own framework. We absolutely do. I would say that the over-regulation that we experienced to the effect of small and medium-sized businesses potentially having to pay up to $60,000 for an innovative product was definitely something that catapulted our campaign. Not to mention changes with Vanessa's law that changed the definition of natural health products overnight to pharmaceutical drugs on top of very expensive labeling changes. So in the face of essentially survival, we definitely had to launch a Save Our Supplements campaign for that exact reason. And so as I sit here today explaining how important preventative care is and how important natural health products are to that discussion, I will underline that it is very difficult to say that Canada can be sovereign if we aren't taking care of one of the fundamental natural health and everyday products that Canadians use to maintain their own health.
Thank you. And I'm going to kind of piggyback on a couple of questions that my colleague asked, and I'm going to re-ask this. Why has the government left this commercial backdoor open?
I don't know that it's intentionally left open per se. It is not just natural health products that are targeted. It's actually broader. It's also medical devices, pharmaceutical products. That this personal importation was originally intended for snowbirds, so people traveling, for example, to Florida or other places, get prescribed something, bring it back. But I think especially since COVID has hit, commercialization of this loophole has been used essentially to commercialize electronic, online sales. And so this has really catapulted us into a very difficult situation for our sector in particular. Many Canadians, like I said, pay taxes on these products. They're not cheap, and they're looking for cheaper options. So they go online and, take potential risks without necessarily even recognizing that a lot of these companies are American and not Canadian. A lot of them are .ca websites. So I do think Health Canada has a big job to do to, continue to inform Canadians, to help close that loop, to make sure that Canadian regulation for natural health product manufacturers are fair in Canada. Like I said, we're the only country to actually have a very onerous pre-market approval system. It may take 3 years for our products to get to market, whereas in the States it could take 3 weeks. So there's a lot of angles to it, but I think a lot of it is unintentional.
As I have 1 minute left, I'm going to ask if you would table any documents to the clerk about Health Canada complaints that you'd indicated in that other question, and then we can review them as a committee. In your testimony, you stated an estimated $2.3 billion in avoided healthcare cost. What would be some examples of these cost savings, and also could the healthcare cost savings be even larger when considering the wider benefits to the economy, strain on the system, and other factors? And unfortunately, we got about 20 seconds, so we'll have to be quick.
I'll say it was a complicated study. I will submit that if that's of interest, but it's a lot of event-based costing, so avoided events like fractures, complications, infections, hospital care, long-term care. So it was a very onerous study that was done by an AI reg tech company. We couldn't even hire a big company because it's such an onerous study. So I'd be very happy to table that as well, so you can see the complexity.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Perfect timing, right on the perfect timing. Thank you. So we'll go to Mrs. Sidhu for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, all the witnesses being with us. My question goes to Ms. Trill from the Best Medicine Coalition. Ms. Keel, you said that, leadership of the provinces and the bilateral agreement, you highlighted that. But where the biggest barrier in Canada's drug review and health technology assessment processes, and what reforms would you recommend to make these processes more timely?
I will be honest. I think that there's a lot of great things going on in terms of drug review and reimbursement. Our largest challenge is that we are still murky in some areas. So when we look at, I mentioned rare diseases and drugs for rare diseases, it's partially about how these drugs are assessed and recommended for reimbursement through the health technology assessment, but it's also about having predictability of funding and being able to access those medicines. So, one of the biggest challenges we face is the recommended price reductions that a body like Canada's Drug Agency might recommend for some of these innovative therapies. Some of these therapies can be assessed and it's recommended that there's a 90% price reduction. It's very difficult to get innovative therapies through to reimbursement if that is the price recommendation. Now, if we look at the PCPA, they've done some great initiatives in collaboration with the CDA. We are actually starting to see things move through the system. I would say that there's a lot of work being done to look at patient engagement at those levels, and we're starting to see some really positive change to the point where we are writing submissions because there are so many consultations going on, and we are able to kind of sit back and look and go, wow, like some good things are actually happening here in Canada at all levels. Our challenges were not cohesive. These are all different parts of a system that isn't necessarily a system. And so we break down not just at the health technology assessment bodies when it comes to some of these innovative therapies and how they are assessed. We also break down because we have programs in individual jurisdictions that may reassess. Those are non-binding recommendations, right? So the provinces and territories, the public drug plans in general, don't necessarily have to take those recommendations. Sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's a bad thing.
Thank you, Ms. Jill. Now, Mr. Chair, 6 months ago, I placed on notice a motion calling for this committee to study the growing role and potential of artificial intelligence in healthcare. It has since been circulated again through the clerk of members' review. I now move the following motion that pursuant of Standing Order 1082, given the growth of artificial intelligence in healthcare, the Standing Committee on Health undertake a study of no less than 6 meetings on the adoption of artificial intelligence in healthcare, especially in research and innovation, data collection, health services, and patient-centered care. That the committee will report its finding and recommendation to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the government tables a comprehensive response.
The motion is in order. So how do we want to proceed? We want to have debate on this, or just
Mr. Chair?
Madam Sazik?
How about some unanimous consent
Sure.
to the motion?
Is there a unanimous, Mr. Bailey?
I'd like to ask, through the chair, why we are not discussing the prescribed IT and Mr. Green, some of the motions that we have. I realize the Liberals want to talk about the study, but this ongoing debacle with Mr. Green and us asking to have the health minister here has not been addressed. And I believe that we should go back to that motion and we should be able to talk about it before we start talking about other studies. Let's clean this up and we will work together as a health committee. So I'm quite simply asking that we address what has gone on with Mr. Green and the health minister so that we get Mr. Green to come back here because he has not answered questions on this whole debacle with Canada Health Infoway. And I really feel that this is incompetence. It's a failed IT pilot. We've got a bill coming from the Senate, and I just received something in my mailbox today that I found very alarming. It actually has Canadian Health Infoway is going to be part of getting all of this right across Canada with the Bill C5. And I feel that if we don't address this IT problem right now, how are we supposed to convey to constituents and the general public and instill some sense of understanding that it's okay that Health Canada Infoway is involved in another big project. We're going to start to connect the 12 provinces together. And I have been speaking with my province about their concerns already. And I believe that we need to find out more from Mr. Green before we start talking about anything else. And when you all get to your mailboxes, I invite you to look at this piece of material that we all received today in the mail, because like I said, it's very concerning to me that Canada Health is involved in that. Yes, sir.
I've given you enough time. If you can come back to the motion, I would entertain. Otherwise, I'll go to Dr. Strauss. Okay. If you have anything to say with the motion that's on floor, that's where I would like you to focus. I have given you enough time to put the preamble, so let's come back to the motion. Otherwise, I'll go to Dr. Strauss.
So this motion that has been distributed to us, I'd like to know what it is again, please.
This motion has been distributed before. Clerk is going.
She's distributing it now.
No, this motion is been distributed
On September
9th.
On September the 9th. Just a moment.
I'll suspend for a few seconds before we. to order.
So, Chair, I have the motion that the honourable member has brought, and we have an amendment that we'd like to make to that motion. And would you like me to read it from the start, or should I just indicate where our amendment comes in? It's been sent to the clerk. So, has everyone received our amended motion from the clerk?
It's in your inbox.
Basically, it states that this study does not begin until Michael Green, former CEO of Canada Health Infoway, appears for 2 hours on Prescribe It IT.
We have the amendment on the floor, and I have two speakers on the list. I have Dr. Strauss and then Mr. Mazier. And I think before I go to and Madam Konaz as well. So before we go to the witnesses, on behalf of the committee members, I would like to thank the panel members, Ms. Permar, Mr. Lebec, and Ms. Steele for contributing to this committee. And I will release you fellows, and then I will go to the point of orders. So the witnesses are released, and whose point of order?
Oh, I wondered if you would just extend to those witnesses the apologies of the committee for the liberal obstruction of the prescribed IT.
It's just okay.
That is getting rid of their testimony,
we don't need
which
to
I
go
was
there.
very excited to hear.
This is not a point of order. So let's focus on. Oh, just a minute. Is it a point of order? Or
I believe so.
Okay.
Well, if this motion is passed with these amendments, then they won't need to go home.
Right.
So why don't we see, I mean,
it's-
maybe everyone will agree that there won't be any more obstruction. Maybe everyone at this table will agree to support this motion.
But I talked to the members earlier.
Oh, you-
It was my understanding, as long as the 1 hour is over, then I'm going to release the witnesses. I'm not going to make them sit here for hours because there are already 4 speakers on the list. Madam Kona, you are on the list. Dr. Strauss is on the list. Mr. Mazier is on the list. And I'm sure there will be other members. So it's my decision. And of course, Mr. Blanchett, Jonka is on the list. So I'm not going to let the members, the honorable witnesses to stay here. So witnesses, you're welcome to go, and thank you for your contributions. Okay, now we'll
Point
go.
of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order.
I just wanted to clarify that the second hour panel was still staying.
Yes, they are staying right now. Okay, it's the first panel only.
Oh, well, we can do a UC right now. You guys okay with the motion? Just unanimous consent, motion passed.
Is
Away
there
we
a-
go.
Is there a unanimous consent to pass the motion? No, I haven't.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Any? So now we will be debating the amendment. Okay, so you're okay, Madam Permar and Mr. Lebec, and fine, thank you.
Welcome to stay, though. It's still public. For now. Till they shut the cameras off, then we'll be in a different case.
Okay, on the amendment, we have Madam Konaz, Mr. Mazier, and then Dr. Strauss. You have your hand up too? Okay, thank you. And Mr. Bailey. Okay, Madam Konaz, please go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's hard to support the original motion to move on to an AI report when we have not finished our investigation into the Prescribe IT scandal. So over 300 million was used on this boondoggle. I think that word has been used, way overused actually in the last week, I have to say, but it's the truth. It's hard to figure out another word to use for it. And I think what we had here was the CEO of the company, Mr. Green, telling us that, he couldn't actually explain anything about it, and yet he had been working on this for 10 years. Within a week of us interviewing him here in this study, in which all members around this table were shocked at his answers. If you look back at the tape, you'll see all members were shocked, and all members wanted him to come back and in person. And yet, within a week, he was fired. And I will say that the Minister of Health has not had, we've been asking her continuously in Parliament over and over again if she could answer what happened. She can't answer, so we were trying to get her in here too. And she actually said in Parliament within this last couple of days that she was willing to come in here. So let's get her in here. And so I think the amendment is appropriate, especially when we're looking at AI, especially if we're looking at the situation with making sure that we aren't using fax machines anymore. That was the original intent of Prescribe IT. Well, let's go back before we move on to AI. Let's figure out what happened trying to replace those fax machines. Let's get Mr. Green in here, and let's get the health minister in here.
Thank you. And we will go to Mr. Major. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And just to follow up on my colleagues' some comments here. So the motion is actually to adoption of artificial intelligence in healthcare, especially in research, innovation, data collection, health service, and patient-centered care. So if history is any lesson to us all, back in 2016, the Liberals announced a software program that was supposed to modernize how prescriptions are sent in Canada. That was called, they promised that Prescribed IT would eliminate fax machines for prescriptions drugs. So that's back in 2016, the Liberal-made problem. They announced a $40 million budget. And 10 years later, so this is just what this kind of government will do now. 10 years later, the cost of Prescribe IT has exploded to over $300 million. So what do Canadians get for that $300 million? Well, that is the $300 million question. Because as of today, and this is what this big software program is supposed to do, doctors are still faxing prescriptions, and less than 5% of those prescriptions are going through the Prescribe IT program. So this is the kind of track record this Liberal government has when it comes to developing software. And why on earth, I definitely agree that we need this AI and we need this study, but we have to learn from our past problems and past issues that this Liberal government has created. And for the life of me, I would think, as sitting as an MP, and you go back out into your ridings, I don't know how you look any one of your people that are, as you stand on the doors to say, hey, $300 million, yeah, we blew through it, but we want some more. I don't know how you guys would stand there and actually defend that conversation. So that's why I totally support the amendments, and I look forward to getting this cleared up and listening to the next witnesses.
We'll go to Dr. Strauss. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry that this is necessary. I usually say it's a great pleasure to address the committee, especially on an amendment or a sub-amendment as important as my colleague, Mr. Mazier's. Unfortunately, this shouldn't be necessary, and while I'm speaking, I'll begin by extending my apologies to those witnesses that are waiting to deliver their important testimony. And I guess I want to inform those witnesses out of courtesy that this should not be necessary at all. So this past summer, this committee, before you joined, Chair, had a meeting of the vice chairs to decide what would be studied when. And that I understand, I'm not a vice chair, but I understand it was a perfectly collegial group decision was made to do our study on immigration policy, the block study on antimicrobial resistance, and then the present Liberal study on pharmaceutical sovereignty. So we worked really well on behalf of Canadians as a team. And one thing that we did not do was spring a debate and a motion on a study that we wanted while there were witnesses waiting to testify. So this part's really disappointing, and I feel terrible that I'm taking up those witnesses' time, but it's because of this very aggressive maneuver that the Liberals are undertaking presently. And that raises the question of why. Why would they do this very aggressive maneuver instead of having a vice chairs meeting collegially, as they have shown themselves capable of doing in the past? And I think it's clear that this is because they do not want to have the meeting that Mr. Mazier has introduced in his sub-amendment, to have the Minister of Health come to speak to this committee about Prescribe IT, and to have Mr. Green come to speak to this committee about Prescribe IT. Both their testimonies are very, very important. I would draw the committee's attention to the Globe and Mail for the last 2 weeks, has run multiple stories, not just on Prescribe IT and the debacle that it is, but on this committee's work pertaining to Prescribe IT. This committee has done important work on this boondoggle that, for one thing, has changed the direction of Canada Health Infoway. I frankly do not believe the board chair's testimony that this committee just coincidentally happened to question Mr. Green and he was fired a week later. Part of why I don't believe it is the Minister of Health said in question period today that she found his behavior totally unacceptable. So obviously Canadians, journalists, the national paper of record, the Globe and Mail, are interested in hearing testimony from both of these individuals. And I think, so then addressing myself through you, Chair, to the witnesses who are waiting, I'm sorry that this is what it has come to, that the Liberals invited you here to give your testimony on their own study, and now they're obstructing the testimony of their own witnesses on their own study in order to protect the Minister of Health from having to answer further questions about precisely what transpired with respect to Mr. Green and the board of Canada Health Infoway. In one of those Globe and Mail...
Point of order, Mr. Major.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering, this seems to be, I thought we'd have a little bit more agreement around the table with these amendments, and you wanted to get on with the AI study and continue on with your own study. That's what I kind of find it more kind of troubling. But I was wondering how many resources we had left for this evening as we get into this. Could you please ask the clerk?
We will do that, but right now I would give the floor to Dr. Strauss to continue, and in the meantime we'll find that out. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So I'll just finish my comment about, in one of those Globe and Mail articles, the Minister of Health was quoted as saying she wants to move forward and not to talk about the misbehavior of Canada Health Infoway and its now dismissed CEO. But while moving forward, she's giving that same organization, which is terribly badly run, terribly poorly governed, they need this committee to come explain to them that their CEO is badly behaved before they take any action against him. Well, she says she's moving forward, but she's giving that same organization another $50 million. So this is a pressing concern. As I've explained to this committee, $50 million can buy a lot of health care and do a lot of good in this country, and it shouldn't be going to Canada Health Infoway, and we need to stop it urgently before she disperses that. So she needs to come explain why on earth she would do that. And when she comes, I think that Canadians should be able to see what occurs, and that's why I'd like to move the following sub-amendment to Mr. Mazier's sub-amendment. So after appears for 2 hours on Prescribe IT in Mr. Mazier's amendment, I would like to add, and given that the Parliamentary Secretary for Health moved a motion on April 28th, 2026 to turn off the Health Committee cameras and hide the Prescribe IT hearings from Canadians with no rationale ever given to the media or the public, that the committee meeting be held in public with the cameras to ensure transparency, and then continuing with the amendment from that point.
Okay, thank you. We are on the sub-amendment. We have Mr. Bailey, Madam Kornaz, and Mr. Mazier. Okay, in that sequence, and then Dr. Strauss. Let me write it down so I don't forget. Bailey, Madam Kornaz, Mr. Mazier, and Dr. Strauss. Okay, now we are on the sub-amendment. And the speakers list I already gave, so I'll give the floor to Mr. Bailey. Mr. Bailey, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I have to just stress again how in my mail, this unlocking connected care.
Mr. Yes? Bailey, if you can focus on the sub-amendment, I would really appreciate it.
Yes, and this pertains exactly to that Canada Health Infoway was just sent out a booklet on how we're going to be unlocking connected care to all the provinces in Canada. This is an IT program, and I am concerned that we have not even addressed what Canada Health Infoway did in the last scandal. And they are going to be involved in this new bill, C5 of the Senate, that this committee is going to be learning more about. And again, in your mailbox, you're going to see Unlocking Connected Care, and it lists the 4 organizations that involved. The last one is Canadian Health Infoway. I want to know that these answers, I think that Mr. Green needs to come and answer questions on why Prescribe It IT failed before we move into the next scandal and get provinces involved. I have mentioned this on numerous occasions in this committee. I don't understand why they're saying connected care. Because Connect Care is a trademarked name for Alberta, which is an American trademark. And already I see that we've got Canada Health Infoway involved with this new C5 bill, and I really feel that we need to look at this and finish this study that we've started. We need Mr. Green here to answer questions so that we know that we can trust Canada Health Infoway in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. We will go to Madam Konaz for her turn.
Thank you, Chair. I must say at first I didn't think that this sub-amendment would be necessary after everything that's happened in the last week. I think there's a lot of embarrassed MPs at this table right now who decided last week to go behind, to force this committee behind closed doors. And now we've got media outlets like Globe and Mail, CBC, I could go on, that are worried more about how is it possible that MPs around this table could shut out news from Canadians for over 30 years. For 30 years, they will not know what happened in those meetings last week. So I thought, why would we need this sub-amendment? Why would we need it? Because there's no way that the MPs around this table would want to do that again after the embarrassment, and they had to answer to their constituents. It's very difficult, I'm sure. There must have been an incredible amount of emails, phone calls to their offices, to their personal phones. I'm sure that they wouldn't want to go through that again, the embarrassment. And the Canadians want to trust us and want transparency, and all of us around that table, this table, know that. So, but I see now that just in case there was any chance that an MP, that a Liberal MP in particular, sitting at this table, might want to hide more news for 30 years, again, this amendment is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Konaz. We will go to Mr. Major. Mr. Major, your turn. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And I guess just to follow up again on my colleagues' great remarks, both of them. Thank you very much for that on this sub-amendment. So I actually have to say I was probably one of the more shocked people that when actually Ms. Chi moved to shut off the cameras, when we just simply started an idea and a thought process, a discussion around getting the Auditor General to analyze where the $300 million went. And we, at the meeting before, the part that really bothers me as a member of Parliament and representing taxpayers, the meeting before that, this whole committee was very frustrated with those three individuals that came in, especially from with Michael Green and the CEO of that. Like the chair got into it. Like they would not answer the questions. He didn't even know he wouldn't even admit how much his salary was, for how much he was getting paid. Turns out it was $900,000. A CEO of a non-profit organization paid by Liberal government is being paid $900,000 with a maximum benefit bonus, because he did such a great job, according to why he would get a maximum bonus of $215,000. Can you imagine that? And we're all sitting around here. We got to debate whether we're going to talk about this in public. Like, come on, you guys. Like, this is a pretty easy discussion to have. And we can all remove ourselves from the situation. It was bad. Someone got away really rich with a lot of money. $300 million was blown out of here. And you guys don't want to talk about it? For some unknown reason, there's a bunch of barriers to that information. And I have had, like Ms. Konaz and Mr. Bailey has remarked, people are mad. And they're more frustrated with the veil that came down when the cameras got shut off. And 30 years. Like, how is that democracy? Why are the Liberals, why are you MPs supporting this? I honestly, I don't understand that. You can kind of comment and read your phones and do whatever you want. But I mean, I just don't know why you wouldn't just like get on with the conversation and let them clear the air. Maybe there's nothing wrong here. But sure enough, where there's smoke, there's fire. You know how that works. So with that, I thank you, Chair, for my time.
Thank you very much. Any more speakers on sub-amendment? If not, I will ask the clerk to take the vote, please, on sub-amendment.
Miss Sidhu,
No.
Mr. Sawatsky,
No.
Mr. Rana. No. Ms. Jaczek,
No.
Ms. Lavak,
No.
Ms. Tessa Jackson,
No, thank you.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Ms. Conance,
Yes.
Mr. Mazier,
Oui.
Mr. Strauss,
Yes.
Mr. Blanchet-Jonca.
Oui.
So sub-amendment is defeated. We're back to the amendment. I have two speakers on the list, Mr. Blanchet-Jonca and then Madam Sidhu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Well, this is quite peculiar as far as committee meetings go, but I'll share my point of view with you nonetheless. So today is May 7, 2026. We're doing a study on pharmaceutical sovereignty, which was recommended by the government. It seemed to be a priority, and I even remember that government members were saying that we absolutely had to start the study. So we are getting close to the end of the study. What happens all of a sudden? Well, members of the government are trying to prioritize something else. They move a motion, and not just any motion, a motion from September. So if you do some math, basic math, September, October to November, November to December, December to January, January to February, February to March, March to April, April to May. Mr. Chair, 8 months. 8 months for those who were having difficulty. So I counted on my fingers with 8 months later, the government is saying that, well, we have this motion that is so important that we're coming back to it 8 months after. So, Mr. Chair, the liberal spectacle is being presented again to us by the government. So the strategy behind all this, the reason I say this to the people who are listening, to taxpayers who are tuning in, well, the government obviously doesn't want to continue the study they thought was important on pharmaceutical sovereignty. So they must have something that they're hiding. We are not, because now they're going back to bringing something back that was put in some drawer 8 months ago, being presented to us as a motion. So just to explain this to the public tuning in. So the government is hiding things, and they are governing in a very unpredictable and unplanned manner. So members of the government didn't think that it was sufficiently important. And this motion is from 19th of September 2025, 8 months ago. Having it passed before didn't seem to be of importance, so that's why it's before us today. So I just want to understand. I will hand the floor over to them soon so that they can explain to us why, in the middle of their own study, they decide to go back to this motion. My hypothesis was this. This is done to hide some things. Of course, at the Health Committee, over the past number of days, we had the new Prescribe It scandal. It cost us $300 million, and we never got our money's worth, and it's coming to an end soon. So it was quite something, Mr. Chair. So people who are paying attention understand the logical rest of this story. So on May 5th at committee, we asked for the minister to appear on the Prescribe It fiasco, and now the government said, well, the minister is too busy. She can't come. So yesterday, on May 6th, we asked the question in the chamber to the minister, and she said, well, I don't have a problem coming to the committee. Mr. Chair, it's quite incoherent, because we have members of the government at this table who are saying, well, the minister can't come. And the minister, the following day, not 32 days after, she says the opposite of what members of her team told us the day prior. So there's something that simply isn't working. Maybe they don't talk to each other. Maybe they don't understand each other. Maybe they don't want the same outcome. But it's quite striking to see that we have people who are telling us the minister cannot, but the following day the minister says the opposite. So I'm a little bothered on their behalf. So there seems to be a problem in their communication. So the way I see it, Mr. Chair, if the minister wants to come, she should come. We should not keep her. I think it's important. She's saying she has no problem coming to the committee, and it's good. The minister told us that she already appeared before committee 5 times, but it also shows that there are problems. If she has appeared 5 times before at committee, she shouldn't have a problem appearing a 6th time. So colleagues that we have here as members of the committee or some people who replace others, it can happen, of course, anyone is welcome at this committee. But we should be able to invite the minister to shed light on this new prescribed scandal. I'm looking forward to hearing it from my colleagues. So this is my question of the day. Why move this motion now? Like, what led you to move this motion? Because, of course, we're quite busy in the next couple of weeks before summer break. So if the colleagues can please enlighten us, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Blanchett, Jonka, one thing I want to make clear to the honourable members, passing this motion does not amend the sequence of business or the order of business that we are going in. So I just want to make sure that that is the understanding. So now I'm going to the speaking list. Next one is Mrs. Sidhu, then Dr. Strauss and Madam Konas. So Ms. Sidhu, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clear that, I moved this motion in my time when I was questioning to the witnesses. Second thing, I just want to put 6 months ago, I just put on the table this motion, and I want to remind the opposition members, I did talk to Mr. Mazier, my AI motion, but I didn't move that time. I moved this motion in my time, and I just put it in queue. I'm not dictating my motion, so when it's just for future study. That is what just want to say. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go to Dr. Strauss. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So we are now back to the motion of whether we'll have Michael Green or the amendment that we'll have Michael Green and the health minister come before engaging in this AI study. I guess I have some things to say about this AI study in general. Like if we're debating which we do first, I guess it's important to have it on the record that digitization in healthcare and artificial intelligence in healthcare is already here, and it's already happening. And I'm not aware of any clinician or any software developer or anyone in the AI space who's sitting around hoping that the Parliamentary Health Committee will advise them on how to do that. I had a visit with my family doctor this past summer. I was very ill, and she asked, is it okay if I use an AI scribe? Or if AI listens in on what we're doing. I said I was very interested to see that, and it did. And in addition to just scribing, saving that practitioner a whole bunch of time, it also made a treatment recommendation, which was very, very appropriate for the problem that I had. So, it's already here. It's already happening. And I don't think that anyone, the AI company founders who, in my personal network, somebody from the region of Waterloo, none of them are waiting for this this committee to advise them on how to do that better. Whereas this government, the Liberal government currently proposing to study healthcare and AI, is the same one who promised to axe the facts in 2017. Jane Philpott was the Minister of Health. She promised to axe the facts. She spent $300 million on it. How can a government that failed in its 3-word verb the noun slogan after $300 million to axe the facts How can they now turn around and say, we're no longer interested in our failed attempt to axe the facts. We want to move on to lecturing family doctors and AI founders and tech entrepreneurs into how to integrate healthcare and artificial intelligence. So like on the merit, as a healthcare provider, I can say I am not interested in doing this study. I'm sorry to have to disagree with my colleague, Mr. Mazier, but out of collegiality, I guess they do have a majority now, which they got through hook or by crook. They have that now. They can jam this study down our throat that as a clinician, as somebody who knows a lot of tech entrepreneurs, I do not want. But at the very least, can we deal with the fax machine issue first? Like before we have godlike superintelligence, can we just deal with what they promised? Can we deal with the $50 million that the health minister is putting into this pivot strategy to give Canada Health Infoway, perhaps to fund their next CEO's lavish lifestyle? So that is about my position on that. And the last thing I want to say is, like, liberalism, philosophically, I am a liberal. In the sense of a classical liberal who believes in openness. I guess I'm so shocked that they just voted down the idea of having the committee meeting where we talk to their health minister that they don't want to do. This hypothetical meeting that they're not even wanting to allow us to have. They just voted down having that hypothetical meeting out in the open for Canadians to see. And they did that without, each of us here, we spoke in favor of that motion. We all think it's important that this committee be in public, unless we're dealing with a national security matter, which we have done once in the past, and you didn't hear any complaints from us when that very appropriately went in camera. How on earth is the health minister talking about blowing $300 million of national security concern? Why would they not agree to have a hypothetical meeting out in the open? So we each spoke to why we think it's important for that to be out in the open, but none of them even spoke to that motion, which was extremely disappointing. So I'm going to conclude my comments in a second, but if we return to this, because I have another motion to move, Chair, that I think will be dilatory, but if we return to this, this subject, I hope that even though we've already debated the sub-amendment, I hope some of them would have the grace, would have the courage to explain why they voted down having a hypothetical meeting with cameras on for the Canadian public to see. There's a lot of investment went into the AV equipment in this room so that Canadians could be present and could watch what their parliament does. So to vote down the idea that we turn on the cameras that we all paid to have here was shocking, and I hope they'll speak to it. Unfortunately, though, they won't be able to speak to it immediately because I have a dilatory motion, which is that given that the Liberal witnesses are here to speak on the Liberal study, on the all-encompassing and extremely important matter of pharmaceutical sovereignty, that we now proceed to hear from the witnesses.
Is there a unanimous will that we proceed to the witnesses? How about if I give a minute, 30 seconds to... Okay.
People are waiting.
I mean, okay. order. I'd like to see if committee is in unanimous consent to go back to the business, which is hearing the witnesses. No? I will take the vote then. Madam Clerk, please take the vote. Anyways, the vote is on.
Ms. Sido. Mr. Sawatsky.
No.
Mr. Rana.
No.
Ms. Jaczek.
No.
Ms. Lavak.
No.
Ms. Tessa Jackson.
No, thank you.
Mr. Beatty.
Yes, of course.
Ms. Ganans.
Yes.
Mr. Mazier.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the witnesses. Yep.
Mr. Strauss.
Yes.
Mr. Blanchet-Jonca.
Oui.
So defeated.
Defeated.
It is defeated. We're back to the, just a minute, please. I'm back to the amendment now, and I have Madam Konas and then Dr. Stoss. Okay, Madam Konas, please go ahead.
Well, back to the amendment. It's obvious that Michael Green is ground zero. Ground zero. Oh, am I allowed to use ground zero in a meeting?
Mr. Chair,
believe
we are ready
so.
to vote on the motion on the floor.
If there is a motion to, first of all,
Oh, okay.
okay, you got to raise the motion on your turn, not on point of order. So I have the floor with Madam Konas.
After everything that's happened today, it is obvious that Michael Green is ground zero for this scandal of prescribed IT.
So, Mr. Chair, just clarification.
Is this a point of order?
Okay. Point of order. It's on amended motion. Just for point of clarification. Just want.
Verify all the members.
Yeah.
We are working on the amendment right now.
So amended motion. Do we need to vote? That's what just.
No,
want to know.
listen,
Yeah.
first, as long, so if there are members on the list that want to speak to the amendment, I cannot call the vote until one of those members that
Sorry,
have the
just
floor
wanted to-
bring in the motion to bring that vote. So right now, your turn is gone, so the floor is with Madam Konas and Mr. Strauss, and then if you want to bring that, you can put yourself on the speaking list. Are you on the speaking list or not? No, okay, thank you. So floor is with Madam Konas.
Thank you, Chair. It is obvious that after listening to the members sitting across from us at this table, that Michael Green is ground zero for this scandal. It is also obvious that he actually might want to come in here. He may be asking to come in here, in fact, because maybe there are things that he needs to expose. And I think it is obvious that there are people sitting at this table that don't want that exposed. And it is their duty to the Canadian people to let Michael Green, former CEO of Canada Health Infoway, come in and speak and tell the truth. Allow him to come in and tell the truth about what happened with this in this scandal. How did this happen? I would like to give him the opportunity to have a voice. It is our responsibility to allow Michael Green to come into this meeting and come into this committee and use his voice and tell the truth and be able to tell the truth about what he knows about what has happened in the last 10 years, in the last couple of years with this scandal.
Okay, Mr. Stoss.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I just want to raise, I think it has to be said again, I imagine the witnesses are still online. The witnesses were invited here by the Liberals who just voted against hearing from the witnesses. I'm cringing. I'm scandalized. Like it hurt to watch. I want to extend to each of those witnesses you can find my parliamentary email if you Google Matt Strauss MP. I would like to hear from each of you what you had to say today. I can't, it's as though you've been invited for dinner and then told there's no dinner. So that was hard to watch, and I'm really sorry that happened to each of them. With that, Chair, I'd like to raise a point of privilege on a related matter. Yesterday, during question period, the Minister of Health was asked about the dismissal of Michael Green, the former CEO of Canada Health Infoway. The Minister stated, and I quote, "I spoke to the Board of Directors and they took the necessary steps," end quote. The Minister told the House of Commons that she personally intervened with Infoway's board and that Mr. Green's firing was the result of that intervention. On Tuesday, May 5th, 2026, this committee heard directly from Dr. Peter Vaughan, the chair of Canada Health Infoway's Board of Directors. Dr. Vaughan was asked whether the current federal health minister had ever personally raised concerns with him or the board about the $300 million spent on prescribed IT. Dr. Vaughan's answer was clear. He said no. In fact, he stated, and I quote, "The answer is no," end quote. These statements cannot both be true. Either the Minister of Health told the House of Commons yesterday that she spoke to the board when she did not, or the chair of Canada Health Infoway told this committee on Tuesday that the minister never raised concerns when she had. The House of Commons and its committees depend entirely on receiving truthful information from ministers and witnesses. When contradictory statements are made to the House and to a committee within days of each other, members of Parliament cannot do their job and Canadians cannot get the truth. I will draw the committee's attention to the House of Commons Procedure and Practice 4th edition, Chapter 3, confirms that the provision of deliberately misleading information to the House by a minister has frequently been raised as a matter of privilege. It also sets out a three-part test. The statement must have been misleading, the person must have known it was incorrect, and they must have intended to mislead. These two statements, the minister's claim that she spoke to the board and the chair's testimony that she did not, cannot both be true. At least one of them was knowingly false. I therefore move that this committee report to the House that the testimony of Dr. Peter Vaughan before the Standing Committee on Health on Tuesday and the statements of the Minister of Health in the House of Commons yesterday are directly contradictory, that Parliament has been misled, and that this matter constitutes a breach of privilege. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. The chair of the committee does not have the power to I'm going to section 20.113 of the standing orders. The chair of the committee does not have power to rule on question of privilege. Only the speaker has that power. If a member wishes to raise a question of privilege in connection with the committee's proceeding, that may constitute a breach of privilege or contempt. The chair allows the members to explain the situation. As the chair has no authority to rule that a breach of privilege or a contempt has occurred, so their role in such instance is to determine whether the matter raised does not in fact touch the privilege and is not a point of order, a grievance, or a matter of debate. So I'm going to just take a minute here. Okay. And if you want me to read the whole section, I can. But if the chair is of the opinion that the member's intervention is not related to the privilege, the chair will rule accordingly, giving reasons. So the committee cannot then consider the matter further as a question of privilege. So should a member disagree with chair's decision, the member can appeal the decision. The committee may sustain or overturn chair's decision. But before I take a decision, I need to have that in writing, if you have, so I can analyze this and then make a decision on that. So within that, so I would give you, Dr. Strauss, the opportunity to give it to me, that in writing, so that I can see that and analyze that. But in the meantime, I'm going to suspend that. Okay. Thank you very much, the honorable members. I have the point of privilege on the floor right now. I would not be able to make the decision on this immediately. I need a bit of more time, so I don't want this to die either. To do that, I have to suspend the meeting, so we come back to this. I'm gonna. It's already 2 hours, so I'm gonna suspend the meeting. Come back to this next time.
Point of order. Wow.